Yo, what is good, everyone? Welcome to the Fantasy Football Prodigy Podcast. My name is Tyler Anderson. I am your host. In this episode, we are going to be doing a preview of the Week 4 games for the 2025 fantasy football season. We're going to get our lineups looking right. I'm recording this episode number 46, on Thursday, September 25th. It's about 4:45 p.m. Central Time right now. So as always, make sure you monitor the news after this recording comes out because, you know, things break all the time in the NFL. So injuries, transactions, all that. And I'm going to get this posted probably before the Thursday night game between the Seahawks and the Cardinals, but not much before that. So we'll try to get into that game ASAP so that, you know, hopefully if you're listening to this right away, you'll get some intel on that game. But, you know, if you're listening to it after the game goes by, you can test my credibility and see how right I was or wrong I was about some of the things in that game. Also, most importantly, we are going to do my starts of the week for week 4. And I think we're going to start with that segment in this episode and then get into the rest of the games. But before we do that, please make sure to drop a like if you can do that wherever you are enjoying the podcast. Make sure to follow, subscribe wherever you're listening so that you can become a fantasy football prodigy. And if you do want video for the podcast, make sure you head over to YouTube and just look up my channel, Fantasy Football Prodigy. All right, so we are going to get into my starts of the week here. There we go. Okay. So we're going to go position by position. I'm going to give you a start of the week for quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. And I might even have a little bonus in there as well. You'll see what I mean in a second here. So quarterback start of the week, Jordan Love of the Green Bay Packers on the road against the Dallas Cowboys. After a tough week 3 loss to the Browns where the team only scored 10 points, I think Jordan Love and the Packers will bounce back in week 4 against the Cowboys. Dallas's defense has looked abysmal this season, and they're giving up the most fantasy points to quarterbacks in the entire league. In this great matchup, Jordan Love will have a chance to put together his best performance of the season. Also, side note, I'm predicting we see rookie wide receiver Matthew Golden have his first meaningful game for fantasy of his young career. I like Jordan Love as a low to mid quarterback 1 in week 4. And then moving on to the running back position, this is kind of what I was talking about. My bonus running back start of the week, we'll start with him just because that game is coming up here. It's Trey Benson of the Arizona Cardinals at home against the Seattle Seahawks. I already posted a clip of this player a little bit earlier just because I wanted to get this start of the week call out as soon as I could. But I also want to talk about it on the podcast here. So Trey Benson of the Cardinals, he was the top priority handcuff running back heading into the season. And after the team's lead running back, James Conner, sadly suffered a season-ending foot injury last week, Benson will take over as the running back 1 for the Arizona Cardinals. He will see a huge increase in volume in this role, and he will seemingly, you know, he's a talented player, so he should be able to turn this opportunity into good stuff for fantasy. And Trey Benson is a really, really solid running back 2 in week 4 against the Seahawks. Did I say running back 2 in week 4? I didn't say running back 4 on accident, did I? He's a running back 2, not a running back 4 if I accidentally said that. Moving on. So kind of more my official running back start of the week here. Running back start of the week, Omarion Hampton. Is it Omarion or Omarion? Omarion Hampton. I'm going to say Omarion. Running back start of the week, Omarion Hampton of the... Bro, I'm so sorry. I have some notes for this segment, and I wrote that he was on the Giants. He's playing against the Giants. So we are 4 minutes into the podcast, and I'm already firing on all cylinders here. We're off to a hot start. But speaking of hot starts, running back start of the week, Omarion Hampton of the LA Chargers on the road against the New York Giants. Veteran Chargers running back Najee Harris suffered a season-ending Achilles injury in week 3, meaning that the rookie Omarion Hampton will take over the backfield as the clear number 1 option. It was a slow first couple of weeks for Hampton, but in week 3 against the Denver Broncos, he put on a show, finishing as the running back 5 overall on the week. He had 19 carries for 70 yards and a touchdown, but he was also heavily involved in the passing game, turning 7 targets into 6 receptions for 59 yards. The sky is the limit for the 22nd overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft on this electric Chargers offense. In addition to this surge in opportunity, this week, the talented rookie gets a great matchup against the Giants, who are giving up the 4th most points to running backs on the season in fantasy. I like Omarion Hampton as a low running back 1, high running back 2 in week 4. All right. Those are my running backs, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you like them. Hampton is going to be a stud. We are going to move on to the wide receiver position. I got one wide receiver start of the week. So, wide receiver start of the week, Courtland Sutton of the Denver Broncos at home against the Cincinnati Bengals. Sutton got off to a hot start in week 1, was strangely uninvolved in the offense in week 2, and then put that dud performance behind him with an incredible week 3. In that game, he finished as the wide receiver 2 overall on the week with 6 receptions for 118 yards and a touchdown. He was close to having an even bigger day on a deep shot that just missed. Since Bo Nix came in as a rookie last season, he has provided enough good quality quarterback play to unlock Sutton's talents on this offense. Bo Nix and J.K. Dobbins are good plays at quarterback and running back this week, but Sutton is the clear number 1 wide receiver on this team, and I wanted to highlight him in this great matchup with the Bengals defense this week. I like Courtland Sutton as a solid wide receiver 2 in week 4. And then finally, we're moving on to the tight end position, and this will be my last start of the week, and then we'll preview the rest of the matchups here. Tight end start of the week, Jake Ferguson of the Dallas Cowboys at home against the Green Bay Packers. I highlighted Jake Ferguson last week, and the dude went out and had 13 catches on 14 targets. Now, those receptions only turned into 82 yards and no touchdowns, but that involvement at the tight end position is truly staggering. Believe it or not, Ferguson has been extremely involved all season. He is currently 2nd overall in receptions in the NFL. Not 2nd among just tight ends, 2nd overall amongst all players, behind only Puka Nacua, if you've heard of the guy. If you do the math, that means Fergie leads all tight ends in receptions. Have I talked about receptions enough? Now, I would love for Ferguson to do more with the catches that he's getting, but I'm not selfish, and at the very least, that volume alone is going to make Ferguson a solid play every week. If he happens to get in the end zone, even better. Ferguson is going to be needed more than ever in this game against the Packers, as the Cowboys will be without stud wide receiver CeeDee Lamb. The Packers are 7-point favorites, and I can definitely envision a scenario where the Cowboys are playing catch up and Ferguson gets peppered with targets underneath. I like Jake Ferguson as a mid tight end 1 in week 4. Let me check that line quick here. Still 7-point favorites. Okay, yeah. All right, those are my starts of the week, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get into the preview here of the rest of the games. Before we do that, remember, make sure you are subscribed, following, staying tuned for more fantasy football goodness so that you can become a fantasy football prodigy. All right, so we are going to start with the Thursday night football game. Arizona Cardinals hosting the Seattle Seahawks. 43.5 point over under. I'm using DraftKings Sportsbook for these lines, by the way. It's gone back and forth, but right now the Seahawks are 1.5 point favorites on the road. I know, like in the ESPN Pick'em thing, I think the Seahawks were 1.5 point underdogs or something. So I liked picking that in my little group I have going over there. But looking at this game here, it's not super complicated, honestly. We'll start with the Cardinals side of the ball here. Trey Benson, I already talked about him. He's a solid running back too, taking over for James Conner. Amari DiMercado is like a dynasty stash as a backup for Benson. I picked him up. I had James Conner, I had Trey Benson, and now I picked up DiMercado in dynasty. Kyler Murray is, he's someone you can always start. He's a decent option. He's very frustrating to roster in fantasy, but if you don't have like a locked in top end quarterback one, you can start him. I would play Jordan Love over him, who I talked about, Drake May, Caleb Williams, Danny Dimes, Bo Nix. But once you get past that tier, it's kind of that's kind of where Kyler Murray becomes a little bit more interesting. And how are the Seahawks doing against quarterbacks this year? They're pretty stingy defense. I'm pretty sure they have a couple good secondary pieces there. So, but he's mobile, so he could have a good game. Marvin Harrison Jr., another very frustrating player to roster. Not a must start by any means. I know he was hyped up as a generational prospect, but at this point, he's in a similar range to Deebo Samuel, DK Metcalf, Devontae Smith, Chris Olave, kind of like a low wide receiver 2, high wide receiver 3. That's the only wide receiver though I'm looking to start in this game. And then tight end on the Cardinal side, and then tight end Trey McBride is obviously a start. He's probably the number 1 overall tight end on the week. If Brock Bowers is healthy, he's up there competing for that spot, and with George Kittle on injured reserve. But Trey McBride is an auto start. And then for the Seattle Seahawks, Sam Darnold is actually an intriguing streaming option. I know the tone of my voice sounds more confident in him than it did in Kyler Murray. That's not because, I wouldn't play Darnold over Kyler Murray, but I think, it's an enticing spot here for Darnold. He's actually looked pretty good after that first game. I would play Darnold over Dak Prescott without CeeDee Lamb against the Green Bay Packers. If that kind of helps illustrate, he's kind of similar to like Matthew Stafford. I'd probably play him over CJ Stroud against Tennessee at this point, just with how bad the Texans offense has looked. So Sam Darnold is a nice streaming option this week. Last I heard, Zach Charbonnet was questionable for this game. I'll see if there's any new reports here. So pretty recently, it looks like he's probably going to play, most likely. He's been practicing. Most of the reports are saying Zach Charbonnet should play. So that does make this a bit more of a committee with him and Kenneth Walker. I'm still cool. Starting Kenneth Walker. The Cardinals are giving up the 9th most points to running backs. So if you have Kenneth Walker, you're probably starting him as a running back 2. And he always has big play upside. Zach Charbonnet, at this point, I'm not looking to start him. First game back from injury. In that committee, you can start him if you are kind of desperate at running back. If you're dealing with like the Chiefs backfield as an option, for example, or the Washington backfield, Charbonnet is someone you can maybe put out there if you want to deal with another gross committee. And then at wide receiver for the Seahawks, you're obviously starting JSN. He's a borderline, wide receiver 1 on the week. I think you would put Puka at the number 1 spot. And then after that, probably JSN, I would say, is probably the number 2 overall play this week at wide receiver. So he's an every week start. Cooper Kupp, he's had 2 bad weeks and 1 good week. I'm not looking to start him this week. If you're super desperate, you can, but he's like a wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 for me. And then a guy to keep an eye on, Torrey Horton, wide receiver for the Seahawks. He is interesting. He's gotten in the end zone each of the last couple of weeks here. And if Cooper Kupp continues to not look great, we might see Torrey Horton eat more and more into his opportunities and get more targets. He's only had 4 targets each of the last couple of weeks, but he's done a fair amount with them, and he was kind of a sleeper heading into the season. 5th round rookie this season. So someone to monitor, not someone to play, but maybe someone to stash. And I'm not really starting any tight ends for the Seahawks there. So moving on to the overseas games. We got the Minnesota Vikings at, quote unquote, the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll start with my Minnesota Vikings side of the ball. Obviously, they're the best team. Clearly going to win. Yeah. JJ McCarthy's out. Carson Wentz is going to start at quarterback for the Vikings. It went really well for the Vikings last week, but against the Bengals, but the defense really just controlled the game, and the offense didn't really need to do much. So I'm not going to say like, oh, Carson Wentz is having a career resurgence, but I thought for the little that Wentz had to do, he looked pretty good. Jordan Mason on the ground, though, at running back is really where the offense flowed last week. And you might think, oh, he's playing the Steelers, it's a bad matchup. The Steelers defense has actually been pretty bad this year. They're currently giving up the 11th most points to running backs on the season. And just the eye test, they're not as good as you would think. So with Aaron Jones still an injured reserve, Jordan Mason is a clear must start, like low running back one at worst. You got to start him. Yeah, I don't know how you don't put him in the lineup. And then Justin Jefferson at wide receiver. You obviously start him, even with the quarterback issues and question marks. You still start him. Jordan Addison is returning from suspension this week. The talented young receiver for the Vikings. Definitely someone you should be rostering. This moves Adam Thielen even more down the depth chart, even though Thielen has been pretty much irrelevant since returning to Minnesota in that trade. You can start Addison, but I wouldn't force him in the lineup. This game, I forgot to say, has a 40.5 point over under. The Vikings are 2.5 point favorites. 40.5 points is disgusting. I believe that's the second lowest on the week, according to DraftKings. Looks like Titans and Texans is 38.5. Oh my gosh, that's even more gross. Wow. So you can start Madison if you really don't have options. But for example, I'd play Marvin Harrison over Addison. I'd still play Metcalf, even though Metcalf has been kind of iffy this year. I'd take the shot on Jameson Williams hitting a big play against the Browns. All the Chargers receivers I'd play over Addison. Pittman for the Colts, I'd probably still start with a high over-under against the Rams. He's kind of in the Jerry Jeudy, T. Higgins with no Burrow range, I guess you would say. I'd start Jordan Addison over Calvin Ridley, over Romeo Doubs, over Keon Coleman, over Darnell Mooney, Wan'Dale Robinson, to give you some names. And, he could hit a big play and, maybe be a really good start. But he's a good player. But gross over-under. I think he'll be a good player moving forward for fantasy. But gross over-under and, will Carson Wentz be able to supply targets to Jefferson, Addison, and then also TJ Hawkinson, who finally had a good game. First time in a while last week against the Bengals. I believe it was his first receiving touchdown since 2023. Like Thanksgiving time, which is crazy to think. Now he did miss a lot of time with injury, obviously, but still, I mean, he played like half the season last year, and I guess he didn't catch a touchdown. I didn't even realize that, but Hawkinson is still in play as a low tight end one. And then on the other side of the ball for the Pittsburgh Steelers here, not looking to start Aaron Rodgers. Vikings defense is pretty tough. So not looking to start Rodgers. Jaylen Warren is a start, even though, the Vikings defense is pretty tough. Jaylen Warren is a stud right now for fantasy with his involvement. He is questionable right now. Limited at practice on Thursday. Rest/knee. Keep an eye on it, but if he plays, unless it comes out that he's going to be limited, I think you start Jaylen Warren as a solid running back too. He's going to be involved on the ground and in the passing game. Not starting rookie Caleb Johnson yet. Need to see him at least get more than 0 or 1 carry. Kenneth Gainwell is the backup. Not looking to start him. And then at wide receiver, it's pretty much DK Metcalf and log out. And even Metcalf is not a must start at this point. If you're in a DFS league or like a super deep league, Calvin Austin has made some plays, but the Vikings are literally giving up the fewest points to wide receivers in the NFL. So if you're starting Metcalf, I'm not expecting a lot of catches or yards. You're kind of just hoping he gets in the end zone. He's more of like a low wide receiver 2, high wide receiver 3 at this point. Kind of similar to like Marvin Harrison in that range where you can start him and he's a good player and could make a play. He's an NFL talented player, but you don't love it. You're not excited about it. And then at tight end, I guess Jonnu Smith he exists. I wouldn't be starting him though, or Pat Freiermuth. You can do better. Yeah, that's the gist of it. Overseas are they in London? Where are they playing? Steelers. I should know this as a Vikings fan. Where are they playing? It's Dublin. They're in Ireland, right? Yep, Croke Park in Dublin, Ireland. All right, so that's always cool. Wake up game's gonna be at 8:30 my time. It's cool. Dude, my jaw feels so weird. If you're watching the video, I actually like scratch out my jaw, dude. It feels weird. Anyways, moving on to ball. Washington Commanders at Atlanta Falcons. This game is a 45.5 point over under. The Commanders are 1.5 point road favorites. Jaden Daniels, he missed last week. Marcus Mariota got the start with a knee injury. Daniels was limited Thursday. It's looking like he might play, but he is definitely questionable. Obviously, if Daniels plays, I think you start him. His mobility might be limited, and that's kind of his superpower. It's not going to be probably as juicy of a performance as you would hope. And the Falcons are giving up the 4th fewest points to quarterbacks on the season, according to Fantasy Pros. But if Jaden Daniels is active, you start him. That will also kind of help the fantasy prospects. I can't load the depth chart. What the heck? I was looking at these depth charts and okay, well, Terry McLaurin at wide receiver for the Commanders. I don't know why that just happened. He's looking pretty questionable last I heard as well. He also hasn't really been great for fantasy as it is. So not a must start, even if he does play. He's dealing with a quad issue. If he does play, you can put him in the lineup. But if you have better options, you don't have to start a limited Terry McLaurin. And either way, I'm pretty comfortable starting Deebo Samuel with or without McLaurin. I think he's going to be involved. If McLaurin doesn't go, that might just secure Deebo's workload even more. But Deebo Samuel is a solid wide receiver too. I know last week was kind of rough, but before that he was very involved, and he really didn't need to do much last week. What was the score of that game? It was against the Raiders, right? Commanders Raiders. Yeah, the Commanders won 41-24. So they didn't really need Deebo to do a ton. So you can go back to Deebo. Again, the Falcons defenses looked pretty decent, but they manufacture touches for Deebo, so it should be fine. And then Zach Ertz at tight end is always a guy you can play. Again, the Falcons are giving up the fewest points to tight ends on the season in fantasy. Who have the Falcons played? That's always a big factor with tight end scoring. They've played the Bucks, who don't really, they have Kate Otten, the Vikings, who shut down Hawkinson, and then the Panthers, who have Jatavian Sanders, and that's not really great. So they've shut down the tight end position, but they also haven't really played a really good tight end. I guess Hawkinson is a good tight end, but he hasn't really been like an elite producer for fantasy for years now. So going back to like 2023. So you can start Zach Ertz as a like low tight end 1, high tight end 2 if you don't have a good option. it'd be tough. Like if you need like an explosive game, I'd probably go Mark Andrews against Kansas City. But if you just need solid, stable production, Zach Ertz is probably a safer play. And then on the other side of the ball, also if Marcus Mariota plays, I think you can still start Debo or Ertz. And you can stream Mariota if you're desperate. He had a good game for fantasy last week. Against the Raiders. The Falcons defense is probably better, but someone you can potentially stream or play in DFS. And then obviously in the backfield for the Commanders, I'm not really looking to start any of these guys. You know, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, Chris Rodriguez Jr., Jeremy McNichols, with Austin Eckler out for the season. You know, there's opportunity there, but it's really hard to know who is going to get the workload. Bill Krosky-Merritt, was a non-participant in practice on Thursday with a knee. So if he doesn't play, that will clear things up for Chris Rodriguez and Jeremy McNichols, where I think you could stream either one, sort of in that Charbonnet, Pacheco range, probably honestly ahead of them, probably more similar to like a Nick Chubb type of guy. Chris Rodriguez led the team in carries last week with 11. Jeremy McNichols only had 4 carries, but he had the big play. McNichols probably profiles as more of a pass catcher, even though he wasn't really involved in that role last week, from what I remember. So I'd probably lean Chris Rodriguez just because if Bill is out, I'd probably prefer Chris Rodriguez, but we don't really know. So I would just avoid the backfield if you can. Just more of a wait and see approach this week. Feel free to stash some of those guys though on your bench if you have the room for it. And then for the Falcons, their offense looked really bad last week. They got beat 30-0 by the Panthers, which is shocking. I don't think anyone expected that. Their offense has looked really bad, really bad. The last couple weeks here, people are calling for Kirk Cousins to start. It hasn't gotten to that point yet, and that's kind of why they probably should have traded Kirk by now. If maybe they tried and they just couldn't, but it's going to become a distraction if Penix has another bad. It already is, but if he has another bad week, it's going to become a distraction. You're not starting Penix. On the Falcons side, it's pretty much Bijan Robinson as an auto start. Even though the Commanders are giving up the 3rd fewest points to running backs on the year, Bijan's an auto start every week. Tyler Algier is the backup. I'm not looking to start him. And then you start Drake London at wide receiver. It's been, a little gross so far this season. A lot of that is due to the quarterback play. If you're in Dynasty and you can buy low on Drake London, I would definitely do that. He's still, in that low wide receiver 1 range. The Commanders are giving up the 8th most points to wide receivers, and like I said, the 3rd fewest points to running backs. So if they're going to get beat, they're going to get beat through the air, but can Penix get the ball to him? I think Drake London will have a good game here. But if it's a disaster again in the passing game, you might need to start to worry if you're a Drake London manager. Not throwing Darnell Mooney in the lineup just yet, but someone to stash, monitor. He's a wide receiver, wide receiver 4 at this point. And if the passing game improves, he might become a streamer again like he was last year. And then Kyle Pitts at tight end, you can start him as a low tight end 1. You could do worse. Low tight end 1, high tight end 2 type of guy. I'd probably play Ertz over him just because he's a little safer. And honestly, I don't even know if Pitts necessarily has upside. I mean, I think last year against the Commanders, didn't Kyle Pitts have a good game? Look this up. Yeah, he went, okay. This is where we're at with Kyle Pitts. He was 4 for 44 and a touchdown on 5 targets. So, okay, that's like an elite game for Kyle Pitts at this point. I guess he did have 91 and 2 last year against the Tampa Bay Bucks. So I guess that's an upside game right there. But anyways, yeah, 45.5 point over under. There could be some fantasy goodness here, but hopefully Jane Daniels actually plays. And then moving forward to the next matchup here. This one could potentially get a little bit ugly. We got the Buffalo Bills at home against the New Orleans Saints. 47.5 point over under. The Bills are 15.5 point favorites. I want to say I've seen that as high as like 17 or 16 or something. So the Bills should crush here. It's pretty easy for the Bills. You start Josh Allen at quarterback, obviously. You start James Cook, who's been on an absolute tear. One of the biggest steals in the draft, and probably because I did trade him away in Dynasty for James Conner and a first that turned into Caleb Johnson, by the way. So great return on that sell high opportunity, touchdown regression, committee back. As soon as I trade him, gets a big contract and becomes the clear lead back for the first time in his career. But the Saints are giving up the 7th most points to running backs. It's a good game script. They should be winning. The only worry with these guys is, they're winning by so much that they don't play the entire fourth quarter. But if they are winning by that much, that means they probably cooked. And speaking of Cook, you are starting James Cook as a high running back 1. Wide receiver, look, man, there's opportunities here. Someone is going to score unless Josh Allen and James Cook just run in all the touchdowns. Keon Coleman is probably the biggest upside guy, but he's kind of been a little quiet since that big week 1 in that shootout with Baltimore. Hasn't really been needed against the Jets and the Dolphins here, and probably won't be needed again. So I'm not looking to start Keon Coleman. Shakir is probably a safer bet for production. Last week, 4 for 45 and a touchdown, but without the touchdown, you're not happy. So no receiving options in this game are must starts by any means. The pass catcher I'm probably most interested in is Dalton Kincaid at tight end as a low to mid tight end 1. Just because he hasn't been super targeted 4, 6, and 6 through 3 weeks, but he's gotten in the end zone in weeks 1 and 3. Last week was 5 for 66 and a touchdown. So it's the type of thing where it might be chasing the touchdown or chasing production on not a huge amount of targets, but you could do worse. Tight end is a gross position, and the Bills are expected to dominate here. So other than Josh Allen and James Cook and maybe Dalton Kincaid, I'm not really looking to start anyone else in that game. Bills defense obviously is a good play. I don't really talk about the defenses that much, but against the Saints you kind of have to. And then for the Saints, you're obviously not starting Spencer Rattler, probably even in a 2 quarterback league here. Alvin Kamara at running back is a guy that you start every week and hope the offense doesn't implode, but at this point he's kind of profiling as more of like a Jaylen Warren type of play in this matchup here. They're going to be trailing, so for a guy like Kamara, that isn't necessarily a bad thing. He might be involved as a pass catcher in that game script, but last week they were trailing and he saw 2 targets, caught 1 for 14 yards. So his target totals are 2, 6, and 2 since week 1. So you like the 6 targets, but you would kind of like that to be his floor, honestly. So 2 games of 2 targets is a little concerning. So Kamara's a running back 2, and honestly, he's not a must start if you have a stacked team or if you're in like a 10-team league. Chris Olave, he's getting a ton of targets. He's not doing much with them, but he's involved enough where you can start him as like a wide receiver 3. But yeah. And then Juwan Johnson at tight end is he's been really good, very involved. The Bills are giving up the second fewest points to tight ends. Again, I'm going to look at their schedule quick to see who they've actually played. But Juwan Johnson has been very involved, basically a slot receiver at this point, and you can start him. But yeah, the Bills have played the Ravens, who had Mark Andrews, but he had one of his disappearing acts there. No Isaiah Likely. Then he played the Jets and the Dolphins, who don't really have meaningful tight end production going on there anyways. So I'm not super scared away by that matchup. They should be throwing. Juwan Johnson should be involved. I'm kind of deciding between Juwan Johnson and Hunter Henry in a league where I had George Kittle and he got put on IR. I think Juwan Johnson is probably a safer play, and with Hunter Henry, you're kind of hoping for that that touchdown shot against the Panthers, and we'll talk more about that later. But next up, we got the Cleveland Browns at the Detroit Lions, another projected blowout, although we thought that last week with the Browns and the Packers. But even though they just beat the Packers, the Browns are still 10-point underdogs. Over-under is 44.5 points. We'll start with the Lions here, I guess, to kind of make it, easier. So Jared Goff is streamable. There's kind of this narrative that you have to start him at home in a dome, but that just hasn't been true lately. Jared Goff is a nice, high quarterback too. He's kind of similar to maybe like a Geno Smith. I'd probably start Kyler Murray over Jared Goff, but after that, it's pretty similar. It's pretty close, I should say. Jahmyr Gibbs is an auto start at running back. David Montgomery is tough. Like, I started him. You got the 1A, 1B punch, Sonic and Knuckles with the Lions at running back. Gibbs is an auto start every week, but Montgomery is kind of tough because I benched him last week. He obviously, he went off. He had 12 carries for 151 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also caught a pass for 13 yards. He did. Now, I don't like to do this where it's like, oh, you take away plays from a player. And Montgomery's a solid play every week. He can always score a touchdown in this offense. So I'm not trying to take anything away from the guy. He had a 70-yard breakaway run, not for a touchdown, just a breakaway run. That is usually not his game. And then he also ran in a touchdown at the end of the game to kind of ice it, where he honestly probably should have slid, potentially. I guess I don't know what the official word on that is, but there was some debate as to should he have scored or should he have slid. So no, I don't want to say it's fluky. He was a running back 2 on the week behind only Jonathan Taylor and just ahead of Jahmyr Gibbs, who was a running back 3. So obviously I felt really bad about sitting him. I still won, but still, you got to get that. You got to get the most points scored to get that, little bonus at the end of the year, right? Hopefully your leagues do that. It keeps it a little more interesting. But Montgomery is more in that, low running back 2 range, just with, the matchup against the Browns. The Browns are not a pushover. They're giving up the second fewest points to running backs. Their defense looks really good. I think if the Lions are going to move the ball, they're going to do it more through the air. Obviously Gibbs and Montgomery are talented enough to, get it done. But, speaking of the passing game, like Amon-Ra St. Brown is a must start at receiver. But then what do you do with Jamison Williams? Like, he's been really not as involved as you would hope. He had that big game against the Bears where they scored like 52 points as a team, but he only had 2 catches. Luckily, it went for a long gain, and he had 108 yards and a touchdown on 4 targets, but his target total is 5 for 3. He had 2 catches pretty early against the Ravens last week for 43 yards, and then he just disappeared. So not a must start, but unless I'm gonna maintain my position on him that he's a good player, and unless you have a really good option to start over him, you don't want to leave that upside potential on the bench. Now, again, the Browns defense is good, so if you were gonna gamble on benching him and him not going off, this wouldn't be a terrible week to do that. But again, when you have a player like him, it's kind of like, if the second you don't start him, that's when he has his big game. So bench him at your own peril. Obviously, don't play him over like a locked in stud, but it's been kind of disappointing so far this year. And then at tight end, Sam Laporta continues to be kind of mid to 4 targets each of the last couple weeks. Hasn't done much with them. You can play him. I would honestly really consider, do I play him or Hunter Henry? Him or Dalton Kincaid? He's in that range. So if you drafted Laporta, you're probably playing him, but that's kind of where he's at now. I'd play Tyler Warren over him. What's Tucker Kraft's deal? He was limited Thursday. If he was fully healthy, it's a clear Tucker Kraft against the Cowboys defense. It probably still is. Just because the Cowboys defense is so bad, but yikes. Even Jake Ferguson, who I talked about, I'm playing Jake Ferguson over Sam Laporta for sure with that volume. And then on the other side here for the Browns, you're not starting Flacco. You can start Quinshon Judkins, the rookie running back. He's looked decent, but if the Lions do lead like they're supposed to, the game script might get kind of ugly for Judkins, but he's looked really good. Not a must start, but intriguing, more intriguing in a better matchup. But he's a low running back 2, high running back 3. And then at receiver, Judy's been disappointing. Tillman has been pretty disappointing here. Judy to me is like a low wide receiver 3, maybe high wide receiver 4. And then Tillman, I'm not looking to start at this point. He's a wide receiver 4, I would say as well. Lower than Judy, but he was limited on Thursday. He'll be good to go, but monitor that report. And then Njoku, he's kind of been disappointing as well. Like, you can start him. He's in the high tight end 2 range. He was dealing with a knee, upgraded to a full participant on Thursday. He's seen 6, 5, and 7 targets, so it's not as bad as it could be. He just hasn't really done much with them. 37, 40, and 40 yards. No touchdowns. If he had 1 touchdown there, we're probably looking at him different. And then obviously, tight end Harold Fannin has been involved. He's seen 9, 5, and 4 targets. So even though it is a bit of a tight end committee, both guys are seeing a decent amount of targets where they are in consideration, but not like super excited about starting them. The Lions do give up the 4th most points to tight ends on the season. But again, what's their schedule? They played the Packers, who have Tucker Kraft. They played the Bears, and then they played the Ravens, who, Mark Andrews finally had a good game against them. So tight end points allowed are kind of fluky, especially early in the season. So, moving on. We got the Carolina Panthers at the New England Patriots. Is Gonzalez playing tight end or cornerback for the Patriots? Because that's a big factor here. Let's see. Where is he? Christian Gonzalez, questionable. Interesting. Because if Gonzalez plays, that he's a really good defensive back, will likely make his season debut. So we'll see how healthy he is, but if he's active and good to go for the Patriots, that's going to be pretty tough for the Panthers side of things. This is at home in New England. 42.5 point over under. Patriots are 5.5 point home favorites. Panthers have not looked good, to say the least. Let's start with the Patriots side since we're talking about them already. Drake May is a good start at quarterback. You can start him as a mid quarterback 1. Panthers defense is not good. They are allowing the fewest points to quarterbacks, I'm surprisingly finding out right now. They've played the Jacksonville Jaguars with Trevor Lawrence, the Arizona Cardinals with Kyler Murray, who must have not had a good game that week or something, and then the Atlanta Falcons and Michael Penix, who had a terrible game. And how did Kyler do against them? Let's see. Wow, those are the most basic stats I've ever seen. Okay, here we go. 17 of 25, 220 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, 7 for 32 on the ground. So very, very pedestrian game. So they haven't really been tested. I think it's very similar to in the past where, you see a team, or the Panthers are a good example of this, where you can just kind of run on them. You don't need to throw the ball. So you can start Drake May at quarterback, and the Patriots running game isn't great to the point where, they might not be able to run all over the Panthers. But yeah, I think the Patriots will be able to score. Ramondre Stevenson is someone you can play. It's a committee with Travion Henderson, obviously. He had some ball security issues last week. Henderson did. Is this where we see Travion Henderson finally get some more work? I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not looking to start Ramondre Stevenson as anything more than like a running back 3. I don't know, man. It's so gross. It is so gross. Henderson had 11 carries last week for 28 yards, 3 catches on 3 targets for 19 yards, compared to Ramondre, who had 4 carries for 18 yards and 3 catches on 3 targets for 38 yards. It's gross. If you want to take a shot, I mean, it's not like you have both, but you can start either one in this matchup. But man, it's a gross committee. At wide receiver, Stephon Diggs has been disappointing. You know, I wouldn't necessarily cut him unless it's for someone really good. But again, the Panthers are giving up the 3rd fewest points to receivers. Teams haven't really been tested. I think a team could throw on them if they wanted to, or needed to, I should say. But you know, Diggs is nothing more than like a wide receiver 4 at this point. Like him versus Cedric Tillman is a real decision. Alec Iamaner, Cooper Kupp, like that's the range he's in. Kayshon Boutte, he had a promising week 1 and flash at the end of last season, but his targets have really slowed down here. There's little blurb here says he has a 5% target share, which is abysmal for those who don't know. 16 and 28 receiving yards the last 2 weeks. He had a touchdown in week 2 to go along with those 16 yards on his 1 catch on 1 target, but that's not what you want to rely on. I'm not looking to start any of these receivers, really. Hunter Henry at tight end is probably easily the best play here. I would probably flex Hunter Henry over any of those receivers. He's a really good play this week. I mentioned him earlier, but you know, he always does this. So I don't want to I'm not chasing this production. I want to be careful to emphasize this here. Just because he had a good week last week, I'm not like, oh, wow, he's so good, he's going to go off this week. But we know that Hunter Henry is capable of these performances. So last week, he saw 11 targets turn into 8 for 90 and 2 touchdowns. Week 1, 8 targets, 4 for 66. Week 2, 3 targets, 1 for 9. So, you know, week 1 was good. Week 2 was terrible. Week 3 was great. Week 4 against the Panthers, despite them not really giving up much passing production, the Panthers are giving up the 8th most points to tight ends. I guess, they've played the Cardinals, so they played Trey McBride, and they played Kyle Pitts last week, who did whatever he did. I think Jacksonville, didn't Brenton Strange do something against them too? So there's some potential there. But regardless of the matchup here, you're kind of just hoping that he gets in the end zone. So Hunter Henry is a very, very streamable tight end 1 this week. I'd play him over Dalton Kincaid. And it's a toss-up between him and Sam Laporta. I almost made Hunter Henry my start of the week. I went with Jake Ferguson just because Ferguson, his targets are probably more secure. And now that I said that, he'll get 3 targets for 30 yards. But Henry is in play for sure. So I think I spent way too much time talking about Hunter Henry. Looking at the Panthers side of things here, I'm not starting Bryce Young. I am starting Chuba Hubbard at running back. He's pretty much an every week start at this point. I mean, he's in the running back 2 range, so I guess if you have really good players, you could not start him. He was limited with a calf injury on Thursday at practice. It's a new addition to the team injury report, it looks like, so that's kind of disturbing. So monitor the news with that. If he's limited or doesn't play, the backup there is Rico Dowdle, so it could be a spot start. If for whatever reason Chuba doesn't play, Rico steps in and you can throw him in the lineup. And then at receiver for the Panthers, it's Tet McMillan and log out. Even if Gonzalez plays, you are still starting Tet McMillan as a solid wide receiver 2. The offense is kind of holding him back, but he's a really good player. He was limited also with a calf injury on Thursday. Did not practice on Wednesday, which doesn't super matter early in the week. But once we get to Thursday and Friday here, it's a little more important to monitor. And then, I'm not starting Renfro or Leggett. And then Jatavian Sanders at tight end, it's looking like he's going to be week to week with an ankle sprain. high ankle sprain. High ankle sprain or just regular high ankle sprain. And I'm not looking to start like Tommy Tremble. So, yeah, kind of a gross game. What's the over under on that? 42.5. That is gross. Probably honestly not as gross as you would think. But anyways, moving on, we got the New York Giants hosting the Chargers. This game in New York, Chargers are still 6-point road favorites. Over under is 43.5. The Giants just benched Russell Wilson. Rookie quarterback Jackson Dart is going to get the start. I'm not looking to start Jackson Dart, even though he's got heart. But, sorry, I'll stop rhyming. But definitely intriguing in Dynasty 2 quarterback leagues to stash. Even in a redraft league, if you want to throw him on the bench and if he hasn't been picked up yet and see, like, you know, oh, does he have something? He's worth a stash, but not playing him, especially against the Chargers. I believe they have a tough schedule coming up, don't they? If I remember correctly. Chargers this week is tough. Then the Saints, but then Eagles, Broncos, Eagles again, San Francisco Giants. San Francisco 49ers, Bears, Green Bay Packers, Detroit, New England. So it's a little rough, but he's mobile. He does have some rushing upside. It looked like, at least that looked like something that he might offer in his career here. But it's exciting to see what the rookie's going to look like. You know, it's a tough matchup here. Maybe we'll get Jameis Winston at some point. That'll be great for fantasy. But running back wise, Tyrone Tracy got injured last week. He's going to miss the game most likely here. So Cam Scadaboo, the rookie, he's going to get the start, and he looked so awesome against the Chiefs last week. On the ground as a pass catcher, he's so fun to watch. 10 for 60 and a touchdown on the ground. 8 targets turned into 6 for 61 through the air. Yeah, he is a good start this week. The Chargers give up the 4th fewest points to running backs. So it's not the greatest matchup, I will admit. But he's the type of player where if he was playing like, let's say the Titans or the Bengals or something, good matchup for running backs. He would be in start of the week contention for me. That's how excited I am about his opportunity. I'm starting him in a guillotine league where I lost James Conner. I'm just throwing Cam Scadaboo in there, and I'm like, you know what? I think I'll be fine. So tough matchup, but he's going to get a ton of work. Devin Singletary is the backup. He might be somewhat involved, but love Cam Scadaboo as a player. I wish I had him in Dynasty. And yeah, he's going to be fun. Malik Neighbors at wide receiver, you're obviously starting. He is questionable, limited on Thursday with a shoulder injury. You're just hoping that the quarterback change shakes things up and makes it so he can get more targets. Last week was very abysmal against the Chiefs. 7 targets turned into 2 for 13, but you still go back to him. You don't bench him. Wan'Dale Robinson, not looking to start him as anything more than like a deep league PPR wide receiver 4. And then I'm not starting Theo Johnson or Bellinger at tight end there. Whoops, I clicked the wrong thing. And then on the Chargers side, is Theo even playing? He's listed as questionable. He's limited with a toe on Thursday. Either way, like, it's kind of irrelevant. On the Chargers side of things here, Justin Herbert is a great play. We all knew he was talented. We just were kind of worried as a group that, the Chargers weren't going to run the ball that much. Or sorry, they weren't going to throw the ball that much, and they were going to be a run-heavy team. They are throwing the ball all over the place. He has weapons, and he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, just pure talent-wise. So Justin Herbert is a top 5 quarterback for me. Like, I have him and Caleb Williams on a team. Someone dropped Caleb Williams before his big blow-up week last week. And it's a tough decision. I think I'm going Justin Herbert still. I think he's a safer bet and has similar upside, but that's close. But both of those guys are in that like top 5 range. staying with the passing game, it's kind of interesting. Like Ladd McConkey was the guy everyone wanted coming into the season. I was a little worried with Keenan Allen coming in, how that would affect his volume, and it really has hurt him more than I expected. Ladd McConkey has not been good for fantasy at all. The Giants do give up the second most points to receivers, so I think, probably a couple pass catchers here are going to be good for fantasy. Maybe we see him have his first good week, but yeah, it just hasn't really happened for fantasy yet. But he's still in wide receiver 2 consideration just because he's a talented player and it's a good matchup. Quentin Johnston, love him this week. He's looked awesome, made huge plays, gotten in the end zone. He's in that wide receiver 3 range, but he's got a ton of upside. Yeah, I mean, I'd probably, at this point, you probably play him over like Devontae Smith, Jameson Williams, Chris Olave, DK Metcalf, Marvin Harrison, T. Higgins. Like, in this matchup, maybe if the Chargers are dominating enough where they don't need to push the ball down the field, that's my only worry. And then Keenan Allen, do you start him or Ladd McConkey? Like, that's kind of insane. I have Keenan Allen in one league and I dropped him before the season after the draft in another for Nick Chubb because I needed some running back reinforcements on the bench, and Keenan Allen has been great, man. I mean, he's had a touchdown every week, which I don't expect to continue, but if he scores a touchdown again this week, I'm not going to be surprised. And if he has good production without a touchdown, I won't be surprised. So it's, it's something. I would start any of those 3. If you have one of them, they're in consideration to start, and you probably should start them. And then in the running, I already talked about it, but Omarion Hampton is an auto start with Najee Harris out. Giants give up the 4th most points to running backs on the season. Khalil Mack is going to be out for the Chargers, so maybe that lets Dart have a little more time to throw, but yeah, it's not great. It's not ideal for Jackson Dart's first start. Moving on, we got the Philadelphia Eagles at the Tampa Bay Bucks. This game has a little bit of weather as of now, according to this NFL weather website. Looks like scattered thunderstorms potentially, 33% chance. So something to monitor if we get like a sloppy game. But this game has potential to be exciting for fantasy. I'm having a tough time getting a read on this game. So it's in Tampa Bay. The Eagles are still 3.5 point road favorites. Over under is 43.5 points. I could see it going over that. I could see it going under that. I'm really struggling to get a read on this game. Baker Mayfield at quarterback for the Bucks has been great. To me, this is a spot where I'm not necessarily in love with it. I'd maybe play like a Bo Nix over him, over Baker Mayfield, for a multitude of reasons. So the Eagles defense is really good, first and foremost. Just solid all around. We've seen Baker Mayfield kind of, and the Bucks kind of have the Eagles number in recent history here, and Baker is good enough to overcome this matchup. But also on top of that, he's going to be missing wide receiver Mike Evans with a hamstring injury. What about Chris Godwin? Is Chris Godwin going to play? Do we know? We got a report on that? I'll look into that in 1 second here. But Baker Mayfield himself is also dealing with an arm injury. He was limited on Thursday. So how much is that going to affect him? I don't know. But the big thing is no Mike Evans, tough Eagles defense. And then Chris Godwin, it says he's listed as questionable. I thought he was pretty much not going to play, but he didn't practice Thursday with that ankle injury. I guess if he plays, that helps. He's going to be pretty limited, though, in his first game back. I mean, we've seen him come back from injury before and not be good. So if there's no Mike Evans, no Godwin, it's going to be Emeka Egbuka and K. Dotton at tight end. And after that, it's a bunch of, it's Sterling Shepard, who's going to be an interesting like DFS play, pick up in your deep dynasty league type of guy, but not someone you want starting as your, wide receiver 2 for your NFL team at this point. Egbuka will be a good play, especially, if he's the only guy there. Obviously, it's a whole argument where are they just going to double cover him more and make it tougher for him without that other receiver on the other side? Or is it better that he's going to be the only guy and maybe get hyper targeted? So either way, I think you're starting Egbuka kind of in that wide receiver 2 range. He has been pretty touchdown dependent this year. Egbuka has. His yardage totals are 67, 29, and 85, but he's had 2, 1, and 0 touchdowns. So the yardage hasn't been terrible, but if he wasn't getting those touchdowns, I don't think people would be nearly as hyped about him. And then, of course, Bucky Irving at running back. I think you start him with supreme confidence. I don't think you start him every week. With these missing pass catchers, especially if Godwin still doesn't return, which is looking like he might not, some of those targets might go to Bucky Irving, and even Rashad White, the kind of backup committee back there. So Bucky Irving is the guy I'm really excited about. And even K. Dotton at tight end, I do not want to start him. But in DFS, or like if you're in maybe the grossest league imaginable, maybe you could play him. But I'd still play like Harold Fannin, Brenton Strange, probably even Chiga Kunkwo. That's where it gets close. But K. Dotton he really hasn't done anything. He has 3 catches for 25 yards on the season, all in one game, week 2. So, yeah. Again, it's hard to get a read on this game because Baker Mayfield is good enough where he might just sling it still. He might hit Egbuka for a touchdown, hit K. Dotton for a touchdown, Sterling Shepard gets involved, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, Baker was great, and they beat the Eagles. But on the Eagles side of things, Jalen Hurts is an auto start at quarterback. Saquon Barkley is an auto start at running back. Do probably temper expectations, though. The Bucs have a pretty good run defense over the last, couple of years here. They've been pretty solid at times. It looks like they're giving up they're right in the middle, 16th most points to running backs in fantasy. They play the Falcons, the Texans, and the Jets. So a couple good running backs there. But historically, the Bucs have been pretty stingy against the run, but you're still starting Saquon Barkley, obviously. And then at receiver, A.J. Brown, he finally had a good game. Same with Devontae Smith. A.J. Brown is going right back in the lineup. You really do need the game script to go a certain way where it forces the Eagles to throw the ball for A.J. Brown to actually be involved. But last week he saw 10 targets as they were trailing the Rams and needing to make that miracle comeback, which they did. Turned into 6 for 109 and a touchdown. I would like A.J. Brown more if the Buccaneers were healthier and were more of a good bet to score on offense. But A.J. Brown, you still start in hopes that they rely on him. They might not, but you just kind of got to, go with the highs and lows with a player like that. And then Devontae Smith. Last week, he had his first good game, 9 targets, 8 for 60 and a touchdown. Again, needing to come back, needing to throw the ball. You can start Devontae Smith. He's more of a wide receiver 2, high wide receiver 3 type of guy for me. Just because you do have those question marks with the game script. If the Eagles dominate, they're not going to need Devontae Smith. They probably won't throw him the ball a ton. Like, as the wide receiver 2 there. It's just not... we've seen it, time and time again. So, and then Dallas Goedert at tight end. Gross, but streamable as a tight end too. He'll randomly make a good play, but like, not someone I want to start at all. And then monitor the weather, like I said. Moving on. Gross game here. Tennessee Titans on the road against the Houston Texans. 38.5 point over under, lowest on the week. Texans are 7-point home favorites. Both offenses have looked bad this year. For the Titans, You're not starting Cam Ward. I'm not starting Calvin Ridley at this point, or Aya Manor, maybe in the deepest of leagues, but that's it. Not starting Chigakonkwo at tight end. Tony Pollard is really the only guy on the Titans that you could maybe start as a running back. Low running back 2, high running back 3. I'd start Cam Scadaboo over him. Kind of to give reference for how I think about Tony Pollard. He's getting all the volume while Tajay Spears is out, but the touches are just so like not valuable. Like he's not super involved as a pass catcher. 1-1 in 4 targets through 3 weeks. And the team isn't scoring a bunch. Like he got in the end zone last week finally, but like it's kind of gross. So you can play him as a volume play, but that's it. Texans are giving up the 8th most points to running backs on the season, so there's always that. And then on the other side for the Texans, not starting CJ Stroud. Nick Chubb is playable. The Titans are giving up the 3rd most points to running backs, and if the Texans are winning, they're 7-point favorites, remember, at home. Maybe we see Chubb get involved, but Woody Marks has been getting more involved, the rookie. And the Texans have looked also bad enough where I wouldn't be surprised if this game is closer than we think. But Nick Chubb is in play. I'd probably start Nick Chubb over those Commanders players, especially if Bill is active and it's a 3-way timeshare. You can start him like he's kind of like a Ramondre Stevenson type of guy. I'd probably start David Montgomery over Chubb. He's a safer play than like a Travion Henderson, but Henderson probably has more upside if this is the week he kind of gets more involved. At receiver, you're starting Nico Collins as a lineup lock, and that's it. Not starting Christian Kirk, Higgins, Knoll, Hutchinson. Dalton Schultz at tight end, not looking to start him. So this is a gross game. Let's move on. Let's go to a way more fun game. We got the Rams hosting the Colts. This game has some fantasy goodness here. 49.5 point over under. Rams are 3.5 point home favorites. Jonathan Taylor at running back for the Colts. He's looked like the best value in fantasy right now. He went in the 2nd round, so that's how good he's been. The Rams are tough against running backs. I don't care. I'm starting Jonathan Taylor. If he has a bad week, buy low if you can. You can start Michael Pittman at wide receiver for the Colts. Not a must start, but he is the pass catcher that I want for the Colts as a wide receiver 3. Daniel Jones at quarterback, you can start him. I mean, he's with his mobility, with his how he's playing, he's in that low quarterback 1 range here. It's a high scoring projected game, so I'm fine playing Danny Dimes. I'd play him over Kyler Murray for what it's worth. Is he going to come crashing down at some point? Maybe, but we said the same thing about Sam Darnold last year, and Darnold was just good all year. So, not starting Josh Downs or Alec Pierce. Tyler Warren is a great start at tight end. If you don't have like McBride or Bowers, you're probably starting Warren. Last week was kind of not super great, but you go right back to him, in my opinion. And then for the Rams, Stafford, he's looked decent in a sense where he looks healthy and able to get the ball to his receivers. Not someone that usually is putting out big fantasy numbers at this point, but he's in that quarterback 2, like mid quarterback 2 range this week. Kyron Williams at running back, you start pretty much each and every week. And then obviously Puka Nacua, you're starting him. Needless to say, he is an absolute stud. Pretty high over under here. 49.5 points. You love that. So it could be a big game for Puka Nacua. And then Devontae Adams, he is on the injury report right now. If he's good to go, he's a wide receiver 1. Didn't practice Wednesday with a hamstring injury. That is the most recent report I'm seeing. Can I find a more updated one? Devontae Adams injury. Dealing with A sore hamstring. Also something completely different. Not seen at practice, according to CBS 2 hours ago. What are you doing? Let's do it pop up. So we'll see. Long story short, we'll see. If he's limited or if he's out, that's not good. But if he's good to go, you play him. Jordan Whittington and Tutu Atwell would be kind of guys to consider there in deeper leagues or pickups in Dynasty if one of those guys misses time. But not starting any tight ends here. Higbee, Davis Allen, Colby Parkinson, Terrence Ferguson. No, thank you. No, thank you. Moving on. Jacksonville Jags on the road against the 49ers. 49ers just lost Bosa to a torn ACL. Their defenses look pretty solid despite all the personnel changes, but that's going to hurt. That's going to hurt. Game has a 46.5 point over-under. 49ers are 3.5 point home favorites. For the Niners, if Purdy's good to go, I think you can stream him against Jacksonville. If not, if Mac Jones plays, I'd prefer Brock Purdy, but Mac Jones has, been fine getting his weapons the ball. So, it's looking like Brock Purdy has a chance to play though with that toe injury, but we'll see. We'll see. He has a chance. Christian McCaffrey is an auto start. You play him every week. Stud, as long as he's healthy. And then a receiver, Jawan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall are the names to monitor here. Ricky Pearsall was back at practice on Thursday with knee soreness. He missed Wednesday, but trending in the right direction. If he plays, he's a great start against the Jacksonville Jags, who give up the 7th most points to receivers. And then Jawan Jennings, he missed last week. Yeah, he's a little more questionable, I think. So he didn't practice, missed last week, got an ankle injury. So monitor the news on that. If he is active, I'm a little skeptical of playing him just because he has been dealing with the injury, but I would be willing to if I needed a good option there. Like in my Dynasty League, lost Kittle, lost Connor, without Mike Evans. Caleb Johnson I drafted hasn't done anything. Like I might have to start Jawan Jennings if he plays. Like it's basically a thing where I was very annoyed I didn't get Sterling Shepard on the waiver wire because I thought I might have to start him if Jennings doesn't go. Demarcus Robinson is also a name to monitor. I don't want to start him in his first game back from the suspension here, but if Jennings is out or any of these receivers are out, Demarcus Robinson is intriguing. More of a guy I want to stash and maybe spot start with injuries, but Demarcus Robinson has a chance to have a role on this team this year. Kendrick Bourne, same thing. He does exist on this team. And then with no Kittle, unfortunately not looking to start Jake Tonges. Not looking to do that to myself. Last week, Kendrick Bourne had 6 targets. It was only 4 for 38, but I didn't realize he was that involved. So on the other side of things, it's once again not loading the depth chart for some reason. That's cool. Let's look it up. You got Trevor Lawrence. Sorry, bro. I'm not really looking to start Lawrence. I don't want to do that to myself, unfortunately. 49ers defenses looked pretty solid. Give up the 27th most points to quarterbacks, as in they've been a tough matchup. So Lawrence is nothing more than like a 2 quarterback league if you don't have anyone else type of guy. At running back, you can put Travis Etienne out there again. He's looked good. For fantasy, he's been a great value. He's more in the running back 2 range for me this week. Bayshal Tootin is getting more involved, but last week Etienne saw 16 carries, turned into 56 and a touchdown. Saw 2 targets, didn't catch either one, but 18 total opportunities there. 17 the week before, 19 the week before. So he's still very much the lead back here. But keep an eye on Tootin, see how much he gets involved here. He is questionable though, Bashal Tootin. It's looking like last week he was 6 for 21 and a touchdown, 1 target. Week before that, 8 for 42 on the ground, 2 targets, caught them both for 32 yards and a touchdown. So, something to kind of look at. I think we expected this to be a committee, and then it looked like ETN was just the guy, but I think by the end of the season, Bashal Tootin is going to be involved enough to be relevant, but I think ETN is going to be, the guy. But he's been limited at practice. Tootin has been, so monitor that situation. If he's limited or out, that's even better for ETN. Brian Thomas Jr., I'm starting him again. He's dropping in rankings and in confidence. It's a tough matchup against the Niners, and it's been very disappointing. I drafted him over Jonathan Taylor because in my main league, I did so many mock drafts, and Brian Thomas never fell to me. And then during the live draft, he fell. And I was like, I was like 99% sure I'd end up with Jonathan Taylor, but even better, I'll get Brian Thomas Jr. Dude, if I had taken Jonathan Taylor to pair with Derrick Henry, oh my goodness, I'd be floating right now. Anyways, he's seen 7, 12, and 6 targets each of the first 3 weeks. It's turned into 1 for 11, 4 for 49, and 2 for 55. That first week, he did have 1 carry for 9 yards and a touchdown, but I don't know, man. It's getting scary. Like, he's a good player, very athletic, had a fantastic rookie year. And, my worry was maybe rookie Travis Hunter comes in and eats away at his opportunities, but that really hasn't been happening. It's just not working. Travis Hunter is not someone I'm starting this week. I wouldn't drop him yet, but it's getting to that point. Brenton Strange is a deep streamer at tight end, but not someone he was more interesting to me after week 1, but since then he's kind of cooled off. Last week, 7 targets, 6 for 61. So, someone you can throw in the lineup if you need. Tight end too. And yeah, without Bosa, I want to see how that defense looks for San Fran. All right, we got a few games left here. I'll try to speed through these here. Chiefs hosting the Ravens in KC. Exciting game. 48.5 point over under. I would probably take the under on that, which means it probably will hit the over. Baltimore 3-point road favorites. For the Ravens, you're starting Lamar. You're starting Derrick Henry. I think you go back to Zay Flowers at wide receiver. And you can start Mark Andrews at tight end. Very boom or bust. Isaiah Likely. He's been kind of making his way back, but hasn't played yet. Worth a stash. I wouldn't start him in his first game back if he plays. He was limited Thursday. Yeah, so he has a chance. But if he does play, that might make Mark Andrews even more sketchy of a start. So other than Lamar, Derrick Henry, and Zay Flowers, and maybe Mark Andrews, that's about it. On the Chiefs side of things, you can start Mahomes. He's been solid. Ravens are giving up the 5th most points to quarterbacks. They've gotten in some shootouts here, so there's always that potential. Last week wasn't great for Mahomes for fantasy, but I would put him back out there as a quarterback 1. I'd start him over like Drake May, Danny Dimes. It'd be tough between him and like Bo Nix, even Jordan Love against the Cowboys. Caleb Williams, I'd probably start over Mahomes. So that's kind of the range he's in. Pacheco and Kareem Hunt, I'm just not wanting to start them. The Ravens are giving up the most points to running backs on the season, but Rashard Smith, the rookie, kind of more of a smaller scat back pass catcher. Someone to monitor to see if he gets more involved, because Pacheco and Kareem Hunt have not been very involved. If you do start one as like a, wide or as a running back, like 3, you hope they fall in the end zone. At wide receiver, is Xavier Worthy good to go? I don't see an injury thing by him. He must be good to go. Yeah, practice in full on Thursday. If he plays, you can start him. You don't have to throw him back in the lineup by any means. Isn't he gonna wear? He's like in like a sling or something. I heard, or what was it? He was a harness. What, right? Did I hear something about a harness? Xavier Worthy harness. Yeah, he's got. I don't know. I'm not finding anything about this, but maybe I'm making this up. Yeah, I don't know how healthy he actually is, but it looks like he's good to go. He practiced in full on Thursday, so he's always a big play waiting to happen, but not a must start. But if this game gets crazy, he might hit a play. After that, I'd probably go Tyquan Thornton. He's looked decent as filling in for suspended Rashee Rice and injured Xavier Worthy, but I wouldn't start him as anything more than like a super deep league DFS dart throw. He's gotten in the end zone each of the last 2 weeks. 2 for 59 in week 2, 5 for 71 in week 3, with a touchdown in each game. But with especially with Worthy back, I'm not really looking to do that. Tread those waters. And then Hollywood Brown, don't want to start him. Wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 type of guy. Revenge game. It is a revenge game. Week 1 he had 16 targets, turned into 10 for 99. But since then, 5 receptions on 5 targets for 30 yards, 4 receptions on 6 targets for 42 yards. So the targets have gone down. Football's unpredictable. Could have a good game, but I wouldn't count on it. Next up, we got the Bears and the Raiders. This game is kind of interesting to me. It has a 47.5 point over-under. For the Raiders, I'm cool streaming Geno Smith, honestly. Bears give up the 3rd most points to quarterbacks. It didn't work for Dak Prescott last week, who was my start of the week, but he did lose his wide receiver 1, CeeDee Lamb, right away in that game. So Geno Smith is streamable as like a high quarterback 2. I think I'm starting him in my guillotine league over Dak Prescott. I want nothing to do with Dak this week. I think I am. I'll check that here. But Ashton Genty, I would put him back out there. I know it's been rough, but he's looked good. The O-line is just kind of, failed him in terms of like yards before contact type of metrics. But he's still, I think, someone you pretty much have to keep in your lineup. Like, if you like have Hampton and him, like I'd play Hampton over Genty. I'd probably play Jordan Mason over Genty with that opportunity with Aaron Jones out. But other than that, like him and Trey Benson is close, to give you kind of some context there. So I'm still confident that the Bears are giving up the 6th most points to running backs. It's a decent matchup. So. And then Jacoby Myers at receiver is a good play as well. Bears are giving up the 3rd most points to receivers. Jacoby Myers is a solid wide receiver 2. Last week against Washington, it only turned into 3 for 63 on 4 targets. But before that, he had 10 and 12 targets weeks 1 and 2. So I expect him to bounce back. Every wide receiver has their up and downs. So Jacoby Myers, I'd be fine putting right back in the lineup. And yes, I am starting Geno Smith in my guillotine league. That's funny. Lost James Conner, basically lost Dak Prescott as well. And then Trey Tucker, big waiver wire pickup. You can put him in the lineup as like if you're an underdog or if you're in a deep league. He's like a wide receiver 4 with upside, but I wouldn't like bank on it. But if you want to live crazy, put him in a DFS lineup, whatever, you can. I like him over Thornton at this point. And then Deontay Thornton, that is. And then Brock Bowers at tight end. He's been kind of banged up. You know, you just kind of hope he gets healthier and healthier. He practiced in full on Wednesday. I'm guessing he did on Thursday as well. I'm not seeing that report, but it would make sense. So he's a must start. Number 1 or number 2 overall. Probably would lean McBride just because of the health issues that, you know, Bowers has kind of been dealing with, but they're both great. Caleb Williams on the other side for the Bears. Great start this week. Now, I want to temper expectations here. He did play the Cowboys last week, who make everyone look like a Hall of Famer, but the Raiders defense doesn't super scare me either. I don't think they're nearly as bad at all as the Cowboys defense. So Caleb Williams might be a guy that everyone's super confident in, and he comes out and is like pedestrian and is like, what the heck? But he's a quarterback 1 this week. DeAndre Swift, I saw he was questionable. I didn't see his last practice report. So limited again on Thursday with a hip issue. If he plays, you know, you can put him out there. He's the main guy there for now, at least. He'll see volume and be a solid running back 3, honestly. Maybe low running back 2. That's about it. Kyle Monangai, name to monitor. He might get more involved, and if Swift ever goes down, Monangai is probably the next man up. The next Monangai up. And then Roma Dunze. Hello. The breakout is happening. You got to start him. Raiders give up the 4th most points to receivers. He was almost my start of the week, but I made him a start of the week last week. So last week he only had 3 catches. Luckily, it turned into 3 for 62 and a touchdown. The ball definitely got spread around more, but you know, he's one of the best receivers in fantasy right now. He's had at least 1 touchdown in every game, 1, 2, and 1. And against the Raiders, you can't put him on the bench. Yeah, he's the wide receiver 2 on the season, so you have to start him. DJ Moore, surprisingly, has been like bad for fantasy. Luckily, he got a touchdown last week. Still didn't pass double-digit fantasy points. So not a must start. Not a must start. Wide receiver 3. I'd probably start Marvin Harrison over him. Quentin Johnston for sure. Keenan Allen. So, and then yeah, that's about it. Luther Burden, the rookie, had a touchdown last week. Big play. Not starting him, but worth a stash. Komet, Loveland, not starting either one. Yeah, that's kind of it for that game. Let's see. Okay, moving on. We got a couple more games here. Let's see. We got 3 games left. Let's do this. Cowboys hosting the Packers. Jordan Love started the week at quarterback. Great play. Josh Jacobs, you start him with confidence. He should annihilate the Cowboys defense. Yeah, he might be a buy now if someone is low on him. He hasn't had a big blow up game yet, but I think this is the week he could do it. He has been dealing with an ankle issue, limited Thursday. Should play through it. I believe he was dealing with something last week too, but if someone's willing to like sell him on the cheap, definitely take them up on that offer. Matthew Golden is the wide receiver of choice I would start for the Packers. You got Romeo Doubs and Dontavian Wicks there as deep plays, but I think Golden has the most upside here. He's made a couple plays, made a good play last week where, you know, he might have been able to score a touchdown, but his momentum kind of carried him out of bounds. But I think this could be his breakout game. And then Tucker Kraft at tight end, banged up, but you start him. And then for the Cowboys, I'm not starting Dak without CeeDee Lamb. Javonte Williams is a good start each and every week as the clear focal point of the running back room there. But against the Packers, definitely temper your expectations just because the Packers have a good defense there. And I know they did lose to the Browns, but, you know, I think the Browns scored 13 points. So it's not like they got destroyed on defense or anything. And with CeeDee Lamb out, George Pickens, his role is a little more solidified. You can start him as a wide receiver too. He's always a big play waiting to happen. Jake Ferguson, talked about him as my tight end start of the week. Love him with that volume. And then Jalen Tolbert is probably going to step up as the wide receiver 2. Still don't want to start him outside of maybe DFS. But, you know, Kevontae Turpin is there too. But it's pretty much Javonte with limited expectations, George Pickens, Jake Ferguson. That's pretty much it. Yeah. And then got 2 Monday night games here. So we'll start with the first one. Jets. Did I say the line for that, by the way? Did I say the line for any of these games? 47.5 point over under for the Bears and Raiders. Raiders are 1.5 point favorites. I don't know if I said that one. And then Packers are 7 point road favorites, 47.5 point over under. Then moving on to Jets Dolphins, 45.5 point over under. Dolphins are 2.5 point home favorites. Slight chance of thunderstorms as of this recording, so monitor that. For the Dolphins, you're not starting Tua. Sorry to say, not starting him. Devon Achane at running back is an auto start. Super involved in the passing game, gets a ton of touches. Ollie Gordon is somewhat involved, more of a stash, not someone I want to start, but you know, I put in like a $0 bid for him in my guillotine league as someone maybe I start over like Stephon Diggs. I don't even know if I would do that, but I didn't even get him. So definitely more of someone to monitor moving forward. I'd still probably lean Diggs, honestly, but and then Tyreek Hill, I think you start him. Like it's been a while since we've seen him look awesome for fantasy. Oh my God, losing my voice. I'm yapping so much. I'm so sorry, but he's a wide receiver 2 against the Jets. You know, Sauce Gardner is there, so that does always make it a little murky. But yeah, that's wait, what is this? September 29th. What is this injury report I'm looking at? Is it the right date? I don't know. Anyways, and then Jalen Waddle, I like less than Tyreek Hill. Limited to practice with a shoulder on Thursday. If he starts, I mean, he's so annoying. You can start him. It's Monday night, so I have a backup option if it gets more questionable. But he's like a wide receiver 3. Darren Waller looking like he's going to make his debut on a snap count. He's back. So I'm stashing him in Dynasty, but that's about it. He's going to be on a snap count, so it'll be fun to see how he looks. And then for the Jets, Breece Hall is the, kind of the exciting play there. Him and Garrett Wilson. Dolphins give up the 5th most points to running backs, so I think you're starting Breece Hall no matter what. But this week, it's a good matchup, especially. So he's a really solid like running back 2. And then at wide receiver, well, first of all, at quarterback, Justin Fields practiced in full on Thursday, so he should be good to go. I think he's worth starting. Like the Dolphins they give up the 2nd most points to quarterbacks. According to Fantasy Pros, Fields is listed as their 21st ranked quarterback. I would like. He's below Sam Darnold, Dak Prescott, CJ Stroud, Stafford. Like I'd start him over all those guys. Baker Mayfield is very close. Jared Goff is very close. Geno Smith is very close. So he's in that range for me with his mobility. And then like I was saying, Garrett Wilson, I think he's going to feast here. He's been pretty solid for fantasy. He's a wide receiver 1 for me this week. Week 2 was ugly. The whole game was ugly against the Bills. But other than that, he's been really good. Last week, 13 targets, 10 for 84 and a touchdown. So, and that's pretty much it. Fields, Hall, Wilson. Rookie Mason Taylor got a little more involved last week. So I wouldn't pick him up quite yet even, but I have him in Dynasty on my taxi squad. So I'm invested in him. And, if he gets more involved, he might carve out a role here. And we got our last matchup of the week. The Cincinnati Bengals traveling to Denver. Broncos are 7.5 point home favorites, 44.5 point over under. So it was bad for the Bengals last week against my Vikings. Now the Vikings are the best team in the NFL, so that is to be expected. But, you know, Chase Brown has been a huge disappointment. Also, if it wasn't obvious, you're not starting Jake Browning at quarterback. It's more about how can he affect the other players around him. So, you know, he's looked decent as a backup in the past. I'm not going to write him off as like unusable at this point, but not starting Jake Browning. Chase Brown is definitely more in that like running back 2 at best range at this point. On the road in Denver as underdogs, 7.5 point underdogs. He's been really inefficient. So I'd probably start Cam Scatterbu over him. J.K. Dobbins on the other side of the field, another solid running back 2. Trey Benson, Kenneth Walker, Chuba Hubbard. You start Jamar Chase, even though it's looking kind of iffy with the quarterback there. But I don't think it'll be as bad as it was last week every week. Like, the NFL is so up and down. You can't get too high or too low. T. Higgins is someone I'm definitely willing to bench in this matchup with the quarterback question marks on the road in Denver. Like, he's a wide receiver 3 at this point. Like, that's, yeah, with Jake Browning, that's where he's at. Not looking to start any tight ends there. And then Bo Nix at quarterback for the Broncos is a solid start this week. Yeah, he's looked up and down this year, but he has mobility and it's a good matchup. So you can start him as a low to mid quarterback 1. Like I said, J.K. Dobbins is a good start at running back. Bengals give up the 2nd most points to running backs on the season. Not starting the rookie R.J. Harvey yet for the Broncos, but wanting to see how involved he is moving forward. And, you know, I'm not dropping him yet. And then Courtland Sutton at receiver is a great play. He was my start of the week. Bengals defense isn't good. You know, Troy Franklin is there. Marvin Mims is there. But Sutton is the clear number 1, so he's a really solid wide receiver 2. Troy Franklin was a big waiver wire pickup after week 2, where he had 8 for 89 and a touchdown on 9 targets. Week 3, he only saw 4 targets, turned into 2 for 8 yards. So we liked his snap percentage of 83% in week 2 for Troy Franklin, and it did stay pretty similar. It was at 79%. So, you know, I wouldn't necessarily drop Troy Franklin. If you believed in him a week ago, you shouldn't necessarily just like abandon hope for him already, because the snap percentage was still there. But, you know, if there is someone out there that you think is better, it's not like you have to keep him. So, and then Evan Ingram at tight end, not good so far. Not starting him at all. He did log a full practice on Thursday. He didn't play in week 3 with a back injury. So I want to see him get healthy, because I feel like if he's healthy and on the field, he should be getting more targets than he has been. And also, I did mention the slight chance of thunderstorms in Miami, right? Okay. So, yeah, monitor the weather, monitor the news, and I'm going to get out of your guys' hair here. We've been yapping for about an hour and a half now, so I'm going to dip. Peace and love. Thank you for watching. Make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you are enjoying the podcast to become a fantasy football prodigy. Good luck to everyone except your opponents in week 3 or 4. We're in week 4. Wow, it's flying by. Skol Vikings. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.